I'm Lawrence Francis, host of Interpreting Wine, welcoming you to a special episode looking ahead to the London Wine Fair 2023. Interpreting Wine is once again the fair's podcast media partner, and today we'll be announcing a special promotion exclusively for all registered exhibitors. My guest today, London Wine Fair 2023 Event Director Hannah Tovey. Hannah kicks off by talking about the London Wine Fair 2023 ticketing changes, describes the integration between digital and in-person, offers some digital platform exhibitor best practice, before delving into the London Wine Fair 2023 pillars, sustainability, education and trading. Hannah looks ahead to wine fair changes this year, discusses the value of trade fairs in 2023, shares some in-person best practice for exhibitors, before delving into the London Wine Fair Interpreting Wine Media Partnership, and sharing details of a special exhibitor-only promotion. Enjoy!
It's really great to be back. It is the 9th of February 2023. I think this might be our third podcast together with Lawrence. It's really great to be back. I always enjoy our conversations. It's a really significant time of the year for London Wine Fair. We love February. It's sort of when we feel that we're opening London Wine Fair season, essentially. We, in big news for us and hopefully for everybody in the wine industry, we've launched our registration for the London Wine Fair 2023. So that opened last week to great fanfare. And obviously tickets are flying out the door. We always have a graph that we follow for the tickets. And rather marvellously, it paints a big smile as we go along, because there's this euphoric rush of our sort of stalwart fans to get early tickets. And then, of course, as is the want of sort of business, it will dip down a touch in the middle, and then it will begin its big march up the hill to the full, over 10,000 generally tickets at the end. So that paints a lovely smile across our graph over the next 3 or 4 months. Other new things for this year in terms of ticketing specifically, we received some feedback last year, which is the first year we ticketed everybody at a cost. We had a request for day tickets. So not everybody wants to or is able to attend for all 3 days. And that's something we've responded to and created for this year. So now it is completely your choice to attend for a single day or to buy a 3-day ticket and come and go as you choose. And then all of the tickets give you full and complete access to the digital platform. So that's there for everybody, and something that we're still very much behind.
Very cool, very cool. And I think, as you've mentioned, the paid model, how much does it cost to come for 3 days? How much does it cost for a day? And what are those different tiers that you're publishing tickets at?
So there are 2 ticket types this year, as I mentioned, and the price points are all 3 days for £49, which we think is rather exceptional value for 3 days at Olympia and the 80 plus sessions that you would have access to. And then our single day tickets are £29. And again, you get to choose your day, so you can have a look at the content for each day and make that choice, and then have full access to the digital sphere as well for the entire month of the wine fair. It's a fully integrated operation now. I think in the past we had what might have been a more distinct specific days for the digital where you would have the content happening, whereas now actually it's a more intelligent operation where the digital weaves through the entire live event. So there is just one platform to use for everything. So rather than 2 separate entities, we think of it more as everybody, exhibitor or visitor, having their London Wine Fair dashboard. And that's really what the digital bit is. And in that dashboard, you create your profile, and within that profile, you set what your objectives, what you'd like to achieve at London Wine Fair is. That could be buying, selling, networking, learning, you name it. But you set those objectives and you set the topics or the products that you're keen to learn more about or sell or buy. And that way the platform can then weave its magic, run its algorithms and match you up with the right people in the event to make sure you better achieve those objectives. And once you've been matched, you have a choice to meet them in a digital space, You can chat by text, you can ask them for a meeting, or you can request a meeting in real life at the London Wine Fair. So it all interweaves as opposed to two distinct events. And we're rather pleased with how it's all coming together. And then another huge significant part of that digital platform is how you can surf all of the content and all of the exhibitors' products in there. So we have this tie-up with the Bottle Books, which has been going on for many years, but it creates our interactive directory of every single product that's showing at the fair that then becomes searchable for every visitor to whether they want to search by price point, grape variety, product type, or they want to search people by their companies or by their names. You can search all the way through the platform and make sure that you're, I guess, being highly efficient with your time and making those connections that you need to make. So yeah, that's the digital, and we'll launch it 2 weeks before the event, and it will continue to run 2 weeks after. And the concept is that you can do your planning really efficiently, you can use your time during the event really efficiently, and then you can do your follow-up afterwards. So you may have had a meeting, or you may have missed a meeting that you wanted to have, and there's still that opportunity to go back on the platform, find that product or that individual, and simply at the click of a button request a follow-up. So it really does give you that 360. So I think the core message is that London Wine Fair is no longer those 3 fantastic days on site, but it's actually a pure month of full and efficient interaction.
Yeah, I like it. I must admit, it is something, and we'll maybe get into this later on. I mean, it is something that I see, and I've been kind of talking about online as well, which is it's just so many fairs. I mean, even if you think about live tastings, in-person tastings, I'll get invited, and the trade will get invited, and there'll be this huge build up to a single day. It will be whatever, Monday the 15th of April, 9 to 5 at this specific location. And that's all well and good. And the people who are there, they're, maybe the ones who are meant to be there, or there will be that in-person event. There'll be tasting, there'll be conversations. But it always feels to me as though there's basically what I call attention being left on the table, where through just bad luck, somebody, I don't know, their babysitter gets sick and they've got to stay at home and they can't come into town, or their plane gets cancelled, as we, all know is sort of happening all over the world. Just life happens, and it means that person who, they would have loved to have been there and been tasting, and maybe was going to write something about the tasting and was going to write something about the producer, they can't then get there. So I'm guessing this is one of the problems that approach is trying to solve. Yeah, absolutely. Things getting in the way, but equally people being a huge distance from London Wine Fair and still wanting to benefit. For many do travel, but there were people last year in South Africa, Australia, wherever it may be, that wanted to participate in London Wine Fair to some extent, but weren't able to travel to the other side of the world. So we found that our visitor demographics online, in terms of the digital space, were 50-50 in terms of 50% UK and 50% overseas, whereas the live event, the in-person event, is very much more UK focused. It's 80% UK and 20% other. So we have established a far more international demographic, as well as enabling those people, like you say, that for one reason or another can't leave their homes. And we all know that over the last few years, there's been more reasons than we'd like to think about as to why people weren't able to interact in person. And given that content like a podcast, can be listened to by a number of different kind of types of listener who all will have a different interest in London Wine Fair, and I'm thinking about the percentage of the audience who are exhibiting, who are actually on the other side of that platform that you're talking about, where they're kind of setting up their physical shop stall, but also setting up their digital one. Yes. I'm curious, would you be able to share with those listeners any sort of tips or best practice around, what they should be thinking about for their online space that will draw in and will attract the most amount of engagement? Absolutely. I'm
pretty passionate about this. My background for the last 25 years is largely been sales. So I fully understand the need to garner leads and find the right people. That's part how my brain works. And for me, the digital platform is ridiculously exciting in that respect, because so much of the work is done for you. In terms of best practice, it's simply about going into that dashboard 2 weeks early and spending the 6 minutes that it takes to set up your personal profile, less if you're very speedy, and answering those questions efficiently, correctly. And it's almost as simple as that, because from that point onwards, once you're set up and you've put a sort of friendly, welcoming statement, just to show that you're active and you're engaged and ready to trade or meet or network, the rest is really done for you. And the fact that there is the whole of London Wine Fair's database of visitors there for you to explore is really why any exhibitor would do the London Wine Fair ultimately. Even if you're talking about the in-person event, you want to meet as many of those visitors as possible and have an interaction. And the digital space enables that so much more efficiently. I mean, one wants to do both, because we're all very clear that meeting in person and telling our stories is a really powerful thing. But to have the duality of being able to do things efficiently, follow up, reach out, make meetings, and then be able to go ahead and make those meetings in person, for me is just the ultimate in terms of how to better trade. And it is as simple as that. Of course, the exhibitor then also needs to set up their bottle books page. So that's their shop window, if you like. That's where they'll list their products, their pictures, as many videos as they want. That, again, the onus is on the exhibitor to some degree to fill as many of those fields as possible by hooking up to the pictures and everything else that they have on their website. But that's their shop window. And then they drop into the personal side, the dashboard, as we call it, and set up that personal profile. And we do understand, we know about being short of time, and we appreciate that there appears to be more and more work to do in some way to get set up. But I think personally, as a sales backgrounded person, the payoff is immense, and it really does get you that unfettered access to the very reason that you initially paid and committed to doing the London Wine Fair. So yeah, it is a pure passion of mine. And this year we're actually doing a live online tutorial just a few weeks before the fair. So a week before one needs to actually go in and do it officially, we'll invite an unlimited number of people to join us on that live platform and watch it happen in real time, how to go ahead and do it, and sort of prove the point that it really is a matter of minutes before you're up and running. As we all need sometimes, our brain's been in a million places throughout the day. It's finding that moment of focus to go ahead and do it right, and having someone just make it a bit more painless, less painful maybe.
Sounds good. And I'm glad that you brought up the theme of content, because I guess that was really where my mind was going, was, I guess, again, the opportunity to warm people up to your brand. And, again, I know you've mentioned, and I agree, there's still nothing quite like in person and that impact, and, seeing the whites of people's eyes and all that good stuff. But there's obviously then, there's so much that can be done in advance, and people can listen to podcasts, they can read content, they can watch videos, and all of those things. I think they don't necessarily have to detract from the in-person. They can actually kind of cover the warming up phase almost, and you can maybe meet somebody at the stand, shake the hand, and feel as though you actually know them and you like them and trust them.
That's right. We all know that business relies on relationships, and that oftentimes the type of business we're talking about, is trade rather than impulse decisions, will require multiple meetings. It will require a period of time to establish a rapport, to discuss things from several angles. These are relationships that can then go on to last for generations. So it is important that we take our time, and just like the live event, really. It is always a question of however much you put in, you get a lot more out. And as a team running the fair, we'll do as much of it for you as we can, because we know that everyone's busy and not everybody wakes up every morning thinking about the wine fair, although we might. So we understand that, as much of that workload as we can support and help with, we do. But in terms of knowing what your own objectives are and going in and putting that groundwork to finding the individuals that can support you and in those objectives is time well invested.
Let's move the conversation forward then. So, we've had a little look behind the curtain, I guess, at, how a modern digital integrated wine fair works. And, you've given us some insight there. I'd very much be keen, though, to look ahead to 2023, given that we're obviously not that far away. And I think start broadly, because I understand that the London Wine Fair has several pillars on which it relies, and that it uses to kind of get out its main messages and to communicate its main messages. So, could you maybe take us through those and what those are going to be for 2023?
Yeah, there's always, every year there's some degree of overlap, because a trade exhibition is going to have the rationale of bringing people together, which sort of ticks the box of networking and so on. But we always have some themes each year that we feel are trending or the most important to the industry. So I think it will come as no surprise really to anybody that one of our passions and one of our core pillars for this year is sustainability. I don't think I've ever experienced a more one-themed set of emails, advances, conversations in my life, really. I think it's quite remarkable how much it has become a mainstay of conversation, certainly. And I think obviously that tends to lead to action. We may not be quite there where we need to be yet, but it would seem to me that the industry is certainly peaked in terms of interest, listening and wanting to learn and engage on the matter and do better. So we've put the discovery zone in the center of the hall this year. Used to be in a sort of back corner, but we wanted to make sure that the core themes that get discussed on that center stage and in the discovery zone really are at the heart of the event. So on the center stage, we'll be having a huge amount of content around the topic of sustainability. We've got tie-ups with everything from the Sustainable Wine Roundtable through to the WSTA's own group technical committee, who deal with things like packaging and bottle weights and so on and so forth. We've also ignited a project with Bottle Books, whereby we're going to introduce a certain number of different questions that we ask all of our exhibitors when they're uploading all of their products to the database, so that we can begin to establish how far we have come on in terms of having more sustainable products at the fair year on year. It's something we'll be able to track. We're also launching what we hope will end up being certainly the UK's largest, potentially the world's largest questionnaire for the wine industry on sustainability, the matters around sustainability and environmental practices, that the Sustainable Wine Table are then going to use the results thereof to generate their content for centre stage to talk about at the event. So it's sort of woven through everything that we do. We know that a lot of our media partners, Harper's being the first one that comes to mind, will be doing a session on sustainability and have their own take on it. So we're very collaborative with all the different bodies that speak at the fair to make sure that there isn't an overlap in terms of how or what we're talking about within a topic, but that everybody is making a new point and bringing new interest to the event. We're also going to be running trails around the event. So while we quickly understood that we couldn't group our exhibitors into an almost mini exhibition within the event, because it just doesn't work thus, because they all carry a mixture of products, some of which will be more sustainable than others. What we identified was that it would be great to lead trails between the stands to those products or services or companies that have great sustainable practices, and talk about each one as a stopping point, and those will be led by real sort of thought leaders or great speakers who know their topic. So we're tackling it in a huge number of ways, but we do think it's going to put London Wine Fair right at the forefront of wine events in terms of what we're doing to support progress in that sphere.
It's super interesting. I mean, it's obviously, very, I guess, at the forefront of, your customers and I think my listeners as well, and one thing that it seems to keep coming up on the podcast, and I think it probably does tie into my deep motivation for producing the podcast and wanting to put this work out there into the world is actually to try to help the people, the people in those communities, to actually make the industry itself more sustainable for the people who are growing, that they're fed, that they're paid well, that they're well looked after. And I'm curious, what elements of the program might actually speak to the community and the people within sustainability?
The different bodies we're working with would cover off a lot of different angles on this. So it's through from everything, as I mentioned, like the technical committee who would look into those more scientific aspects of bottle weight and packaging. And we have a collective of producers, the WTAF, who are producing all manner of different packaging to ensure that they're more sustainable, through to the Sustainable Wine Roundtable, who would cover off not only the more technical side, but the more people side. So they have their member groups, and they are working really hard to try and put together a criteria and a set of reference points against which people can improve themselves. They can actually, first of all, sort of check in with and then measure themselves against and improve against. So another interesting body that we're still in conversation with about exactly how much we permeate the show, we're certainly going to be working together, is the DNV, who actually have, rather than bringing in actual reference points and rules, if you like, they're more there to check that whatever statements companies are making about themselves, to actually verify that those statements are correct, or to measure them to enable the companies to then publish corrected information. So we really feel like we're looking into it and trying to make sure that we cover off each and every angle as we go along. Talking more about people, we've got a real theme of trying to support diversity running through the event sort of concurrently. I think there's it's a bit like a Venn diagram, isn't it? There's overlaps there. And we're working with a couple of bodies to make sure that we've got some really strong content there as well. And we'll be revealing that in March, April time. So stay tuned for that.
And I'm going to move to the next pillar that you've provided me on the list, which is education, and alongside the WSET. So, could you tell us, what you can about that at this time?
Education is incredibly important to us. It was one of the things I identified when I first took over the role with the London Wine Fair. It's not lost on me that perhaps many moons back the wine fair had somewhat of a reputation for younger people from the industry. I think the word marauding may have been used, but attending in groups and perhaps not achieving the best outcome for themselves or for the exhibitors. And taking that kind of critique on board and that feedback on board in my early days, I made a kind of mental note to tackle it in year one, and I believe we did. And since then, because of that, we really have continued down this passionate route with education. So we approached a number of bodies and suggested to them that it would be ideal to work with us to create agendas and space within the event for the younger up and coming parts of the industry. My belief is that actually the people starting out in the industry, of course, are just as important, because they'll be with you on their journey from the beginning to the end. And my first wine fair was, I can't remember if it's 99 or 2000, but I was a young buck once going there and making all of the contacts that have gone on to become industry friends and so on and so forth. And at the ripe old age that I am now, one of the things that sort of makes me laugh the most is, first, that people always want to tell you what their first wine fair was, their vintage first, and also that they probably worked at Majestic. That seems that the age I'm at, it's at Majestic's. Prior to that, I believe it was Oddbins, and then First Wine Fair that we talked about. But and you look back you look back at all those conversations and realize that all of those people that you're speaking to in really significant jobs in the wine industry now, serious jobs making a difference, and should they not have been made to feel welcome and given a good access to the London Wine Fair all those 20, 30 years ago, that may not be the case now. They may not have fallen in love with the industry in the way that we all do and stayed within it. So it's a really important part, but it's also not expressly the reason why wine importers and wine brands would exhibit with us. So we've got to get that fine line right of making the fair valid and open to this community of people, but equally making the fair successful and rewarding for those that exhibit. And one of those ways is by introducing the education zone, having a solid timetable of 5 sessions every single day within there that are uniquely set up as a kind of introductory level information. It's all free to attend, and you can busy yourself with it pretty much throughout the whole day. Some of the larger employers that we work with who have vast teams are actually brilliant as well at working with us to create actual agendas for their entry-level staff. And we create agendas so that not only do they attend a session in the education zone, but we create a certain number of stand visits where they're anticipated, expected, and given a strong welcome, but also a lot of information. And it's so hugely beneficial to everyone. So education for that reason, but also education because there are a ton of stats out there that tell us that a better educated trade makes a better trade, which actually makes for a better consumer. It makes better consumer experience. So it's demonstrable that the more wine education that there is, the better outcome for everybody, trade and consumer. So we're delighted that another year running, I think this will be our 4th together. We welcome back WSET as the headline sponsor, but we do work with lots of other educational bodies within the zone. It's not exclusive, but we do get that great support from WSET, which sort of makes it possible to set up a dedicated theatre and do all those sessions. So I remain strong about that I think it was the right thing to do then, and it continues to be the right thing to do now.
Yeah, and I think it's, again, always around this time of year, the Silicon Valley Bank State of the Wine Industry report comes out, and again, it is focused on the US, but once again, they've shown that there's maybe challenges are still there about attracting younger drinkers, and that there's
absolutely.
Obviously lots of competition.
It's huge, and I think we all need to. I think we're alert to it, but maybe not really tackling it. I think the stats are there, and we can all see that the younger the consumer, the less they're engaging. Obviously, of drinking age, I mean, sure. But the younger the consumer, the less they're engaging with wine, and it's a tragedy, really, because they are engaged in a lot of the ideas that is important to wine. They love a story, they love understanding heritage and where something's from, and all of those things that wine ought to be at the heart of the youth, and drinking responsibly is a great thing, but not accessing it at all feels really sad.
Yeah, and I'm guessing education is one of the ways to open that field up and to bring new people in. I certainly see that I have a large following of the podcast that's under 27, and I do have collaborated with the WSET on a number of occasions to bring that educational content. But again, a lot of the feedback I get is you've got young listeners. They're wanting to really delve in depth into topics, into producers, into wine styles, and as you say, it's almost like these things are a match made in heaven, but unfortunately, the actual numbers, they're not showing that.
Yeah, and I think it's how you've captured it. You're on the scene. You're in podcasts. That's a very modern or newer way of reaching out. But how you reach send those messages out is so important, and not being afraid to have content on TikTok or videos, short reels, shorts. All of that is just about how you put that information to the consumer, and that's something we're really passionate about on the Wine Fair as well. We've very much adopted the whole dynamic advertising, the animated campaigns, the work on social media is something that we understand that we need to keep moving with the times. And in fact, if the wine industry, some are doing it rather brilliantly, I have to say, but perhaps if more companies would embrace the right media, then the consumer would actually be more engaged, essentially.
Absolutely. And I think even our collaboration, this is getting sort of, super sort of macro and meta.
Great segue.
Our collaboration for the second year now with Interpreting Wine as the podcast media partner.
Yes.
We'll be talking a little bit later on about, some of the specifics of that. We'll definitely get back into what's new in terms of our relationship and in terms of our partnership later on in the podcast. But I don't want to completely derail you from discussing the pillars. So I believe next pillar is to talk about trading in 2023.
Yes, I think there's so much great stuff at the fair, and it's easy to get sidetracked in so much going on. But at the absolute heart of it has to be buying and selling wine. The industry can't survive without the purchase of wine at trade level, and that is never lost on us. So we try and encourage as much of that as possible. For our exhibitors, we appreciate that attending a trade fair is not only an expensive part of their budget, or a large chunk of their budget, but it's a large chunk of their time. They're out of the office for 4 days at least, sort of if they're setting up, and then in there for 3 days, and they're pouring a lot of stock. There's this huge investment. So the value has to be there. They have to get the return on investment. And that's one of the reasons that we are so committed to making the digital platform such a core element, because we know that any good salesperson is going to want to go and get into a leads list. But ultimately just bringing people together in a space where they can tell their stories and they can make those connections and build those relationships and encourage those relationships that really they change the direction of a company. We know that particularly the smaller companies that exhibit with us, who might meet a big time buyer and get a listing, for them not only is that going to wipe off the score of what they had to pay for the event, but potentially change the direction of their company for many years. So trading is pivotal, and it's not lost on us.
As you were talking there, Hannah, I was actually just thinking back and doing the maths around my own vintage. So I realized that my first London Wine Fair was only back in 2018. So I'm I guess a pretty young a young vintage.
You are fresh, young, and you'll go on for years.
Exactly. I'm just hitting my stride. That's what they say. That's what I say anyway. But even within that relatively young experience and event experience, I've noticed many changes. Every year there's been something new that's happened, and comparing 18 to my last fair last year, 22, there's been tons of changes over that time, and this would be a great point, I think, in the conversation to look ahead and to talk about what are the changes that are coming down the line in 2023.
Yeah, I think good point. We certainly haven't stood still for a long time. I'm not sure I've ever known a time that is just so fast moving and changing. Obviously, we've had the pandemic to tackle. And frankly, even though we did manage to do an exhibition in 2022, and it was great, it's undeniable that the pandemic still had its claws in there somewhat. So for this year, we felt it was really the first year that we've had a complete cycle, and that we are working in a normal manner. And when I say normal, I mean that we're not constantly sort of second guessing what restrictions may be in place, et cetera, et cetera. We're able to focus on the event. itself, which is an absolute joy. So we felt it was a really good time, even though somewhat superficial, to have a fresh new look. I think obviously branding is important, and we feel that it was time to say London Wine Fair is stepping out of the pandemic. And we've gone for this rather more natural feel. Perhaps because we're so mindful of the sustainability and viticulture type vibe that is so woven through the event now. Equally, we wanted to have that connection back to the actual grape that is the heart of the fair. In previous years before, we'd gone for a more building blocks vibe, which was more about sort of bringing the pieces together, and now we've reverted back to a more very modern, clean looking but lovely and natural imagery. And I think that just gives us that fresh breath of air, and we can move forward with it. We've also completely revised the floor plan. We're always looking at the best ways to make sure that we'll get footfall throughout the whole 10, 12,000 square meters, making sure that our exhibitors will get the best out the event, that you don't end up with a corner that nobody wants to be in. So we've actually created an entire perimeter around the Grand Hall of all of the features. And that has meant bringing Esoterica, our specialist importer zone, downstairs, and it's also meant bringing the Wines on Earth. Those are the producers who are looking for UK importers and distributors. So that's all come downstairs, and I think it's going to make it all very buzzy. But we also have brought our masterclasses into the hall, and that is in complete transparency because the Pillar Hall that we normally hold them is now part of the big development work at Olympia. But it just means that we have this entire perimeter. We've picked up the Drinks Britannia and Wine GB section. Now, this is quite an important point for 2023. We always look back on our database that we use, that digital database, and we check in on what our visitors have searched. What are they looking for? What are the top 10 searches? Now, UK products went from number 6 in 2019, which was the last live event before 22, to number 1 in 2022. And we felt that if nothing else, that meant that we ought to pick it up from the back of the hall and put it in the middle, in the heart of the event. So we know that our visitors are highly motivated towards seeking out, purchasing, tasting British products. And I think that's great. They're homegrown. It's what we should be doing really well. So that's an important change. And then there are other trends going on. Mindful drinking, as we're calling it this year. It was the no and low zone last year, but the movement now really is towards calling it mindful drinking. And so we've got a double-sized mindful drinking zone of kind of exhibition within an exhibition we're running in conjunction with Club Soda. We all know that they're penetrating that market rather amazingly and doing exciting stuff. So that's going to be a lot bigger. And again, that's around the perimeter. And we've launched completely new this year, a distill and brew section. So this is our non-wines, so spirits and beers and ciders. We know that buyers, 50% of our buyer visitors to London Wine Fair buy across the product. So we've got that audience there for them. That's in excess of 5,000 potential buyers of those products. And that's a growth area. So we're encouraging it. We're welcoming it. And I would say that that's our non-wine aspects that are important. They are great bedfellows with us. But in terms of the wine, I'd say it's that British products. And then we've got some really exciting first-time pavilions. We've got, for the first time, as far as I'm aware, but maybe going back some time, I may be wrong, we have a Catalan pavilion, which I think is going to be new and exciting. We've got a group of producers from Tejo. We've got a bigger than ever Portuguese showing. It's becoming more and more important to our event. We've got a collection of 18 Portuguese producers coming together for a pavilion. And then just some of the stuff we do really well, some of those pavilions that get enormous footfall, and that's our Georgians and our Romanians, Armenians. We just love that content. It's exciting, it's fresh, and we're just trying to find out exactly how many square meters India need for this year, because it's in growth. And they had so much fun on their stand last year, and it was really perpetually busy. So really looking forward to seeing just how. We know it's going to be bigger. We're just not sure quite how much. We're doing the final square meters on that. And then just some lovely exhibitors that we always enjoy welcoming back. The great showing that Hatch Mansfield always do. The amazing stand from Inotria. They're planning some even ever more exciting masterclasses on there. I think there's usually a roster of 12 masterclasses just by them on the stand. So we've got just so much going on. It's hard to get it all into one podcast, really.
Yeah, exactly. We need the podcast format to be able to get it all out there. And
we need a weekly podcast, Lawrence. I thoroughly exhaust you with the Wi-Fi knowledge. And then one of the things that sets London Wine Fair apart from any of its competitors, undoubtedly, is our masterclass content. It's second to none, and we've got over 80 sessions coming this year. It really is an Aladdin's den. Anybody who's in the industry and passionate about their job, there's something for you. We could keep you busy for 3 days, no problem.
Yeah, I'm already looking forward to the fair. It sounds like there's going to be kind of, loads happening simultaneously. There's going to be, lots of reasons to come down on any or all of the days. And I guess that's your job, and your team's job is to make that event as attractive as possible to bring people through, which I think interestingly does bring up another thought, another theme that I think I see more and more online, which is really, I think, people questioning, in 2023, why even have a live event? Why potentially travel out of your home, travel across London or travel across the country to a venue? Haven't we all kind of evolved post-pandemic, and the learnings that we got from that? Isn't it, just as good to do things digitally or do things virtually rather than actually needing an in-person event?
I think you're right to acknowledge that there are certainly naysayers, and perhaps even less polite than you alluded to about how they may not place much value or see much value in trade fairs. There definitely is a mindset that feels that, even perhaps more local events or smaller, more niche events are powerful. And it's not something I shy away from discussing, because I think that there is a place for everything. I'm right with you in that digital space. I think that there is an absolute valid rationale for doing digital events. We have to be more efficient. Life is more difficult. Winning business is harder these days. The climate we're in, one needs to be efficient. And also, if that efficiency is there, it would be somewhat bizarre not to take advantage of it. That's my take on it. So I think that digital should be embraced, but it should be concurrent with live events, because there's certain aspects of live events that you cannot reproduce online. You just simply can't. It's funny that you should mention it, because I was just having a look on Twitter the other day, as one does, and I saw a post from Sarah Davies, MBE. She's one of the Dragon's Dens, but she's also Mrs. Craft. I guess her company's called Crafters Companion, and she's a multi-billionaire, or a multi-millionaire, I should say, and certainly a very commercially minded woman, somebody that wouldn't waste time or want to do something for the sake of it. She would need there to be a complete business rationale. And she asked the question on Twitter, are trade shows still relevant? And she had been minded that they weren't, I think, prior to going along to one the other day. And it was just a joy to read it. And I think it's better, I could tell everyone until I'm blue in the face that trade fairs are exciting, they're useful, they're rewarding to attend commercially. But when somebody whose sort of life centers around business and profit tells you that it was an absolute joy to get back to a trade fair, to meet people in person and to do business and to learn and make connections that they wouldn't have, it just gives you a huge sense of what's the word, validation that what you're doing is what you perceive it to be doing. I think you know the contacts that you make, the businesses and the business that spring out of trade exhibition is unparalleled, and because it's B2B, the scale of the business potential is vast, and it's just so important for the UK to just once a year come together in this way. And although we're now creeping into a month rather than a few days, to come together and to learn, trade and network, it's vital, not only for the businesses that attend to achieve more business, but for us collectively to just be a better industry. And I'm really passionate about it. From my first visit in 99, 2000, got to find out exactly which one it was. I started out on my journey through all of the connections I've made personally on the way that have made different jobs happen, or joint ventures, or projects, or business. It just never ceases to amaze me what the potential of these spaces are when they're done well. And I think, that's the answer to that. You can get good use out of small local events, and they have their place, but they cannot compete with, or nor should they. They're not. We shouldn't be competing. Essentially, there is a need for one great event each year, and that I think is what we all need to sort of get on board with, because the more comprehensive it is, the more companies that are there, the more opportunities for everybody. And the more visitors that come, again, it just is self-fulfilling in in itself. It's circular. The more, the better.
I'll put this out there as well, because I think it actually almost mirrors the question that I asked earlier. And it's more, again, putting myself in the shoes of one of your exhibitors. Are there some sort of best practice, I guess, tips, from your experience and what you've seen that you think, okay, actually, maybe, part of it, and it will, show both sides here. Are there things that these guys are doing really well, which means that they get a fabulous return, and there's things that people just aren't doing over here that means that the event is not working for them. It's not the event per se. It's also about your own interaction and your own engagement with that. Yeah.
I think the expression is, you can lead a horse to water, but you can't make it drink, right? We can put on the best event in the world, but if our exhibitors don't get on board and maximize their experience, they won't get the return on investment that they deserve from attending. It is deeply frustrating. There are, for want of a better expression, some naughty exhibitors versus some excellent exhibitors in terms of how much they embrace it and how much they put into it. And we're all slaves to time. I'm conscious that people can't give up their lives to make a transformative London Wine Fair for themselves, but there are some steps you have to take. It won't work to simply turn up on the day and see what happens. Sure, maybe you'll get some good luck and the right person will saunter by at the right moment, but there is so much you can do in preparation, preparing that shop window online, pre-booking your meetings, fill that calendar before and make sure that your day is super busy. Some things are as simple as smile, but really come with the attitude that you're here to enjoy it and embrace it and make the most out of it. And we actually do a session the evening before for our producer exhibitors on sort of best practice, because for our Wines on Earth, that'll often be the first time they've actually exhibited at a large scale event or an exhibition. So we take them through the sort of pros and cons of even just how to sample and how to engage with the audience and so on. But it's vital. But the main thing is tell the organizer of the event, and that, for us it's London Wine Fair, tell us what your objectives are and what you're going to be doing at the event, because we start promoting London Wine Fair for a solid 5.5 months before, and every email that we put together is empty when it starts. So we want to fill it up with as much content about our exhibitors as we can. But if you haven't told us what your plan is or which wines you're showing, it's very difficult for us to support your visibility at the event.
Absolutely. And I just want to clarify a bit on one point there, that filling of the diary, that is something specific to the platform that they'll get access to? Yeah.
Yeah, we've always had an app for like quite a few years now, but now the whole thing is just integrated through one dashboard. So you do it all there. And you just either allow the algorithm to choose your matches for you, or you drop into the database of all of the attendees and all of the exhibitors and find your own matches. And you can do both. But you can literally just request meeting, and fill up that diary. And the dashboard does a lovely job of finding your first availability and the other person's first availability and matching them together and making suggestions of slots you both have. So lots of that horrid work is all done for you of making your diary work.
In closing, really, I mean, I know I already hinted earlier about our renewed collaboration for 2023. So I think it would be great to hear from your side, I guess a little bit about what you're hoping the collaboration will kind of deliver, and again maybe what you saw it delivering last year.
Yeah, we loved making the connection with you in 2022. I guess as a team, we're always wanting to embrace new methods and new ways to reach our audience. And we loved some of the stats you shared with us about how people engage with podcasts and all of your learnings. And we felt that there were some learnings we could take from that and benefits to both parties in working together. And I think that has definitely come to fruition. It was fantastic to learn that there were over 800 hours, I believe, of listens to the session that we did last year. That's an awful lot of hearing my voice, which slightly makes me a bit squeamish, but it's what we're here for, to be seen and heard and to talk about the event that we're so passionate about. But we loved your methodology, and actually just even recording the podcast comes rather easily with you. So we hope that, you feel the same towards London Wine Fair. And I'm just really excited that we're dialing things up for this year. We're not resting on our laurels, and we're doing something even more new and innovative. And the rationale was that actually even more people can benefit from this new idea and this new way of working. So Lawrence and Interpreting Wine have very kindly put forward a prize for us of an actual podcast, a whole podcast dedicated to one of our exhibitors. So for any exhibitor that is signed up to do London Wine Fair by the 24th of March this year, we and Interpreting Wine are offering them the opportunity to do what I'm doing now, which is to put together an entire session, an entire podcast that will be published through Lawrence's channels and then can be used for own personal promotion going forward. So the idea would be that you talk a bit about what you're doing at London Wine Fair and why, but equally a really lovely opportunity to promote your own products and your own, whether it's products, services, you name it. So once the podcast is recorded for one of our lucky exhibitors, the huge benefit is that not only will the London Wine Fair get behind the promotion of that to over 100,000 of our trade audience, but equally Lawrence is committed to publishing it on his own platform and promoting it through his own channel, so to really get the double benefit of both of those avenues. So good luck. I think that's something really exciting. I know we've benefited enormously from having this podcast, and so thank you, Lawrence, for the opportunity and allowing us to offer it out there. And we hope that we'll get someone who's equally passionate about podcasts to get involved with it, because I'm certainly a fan.
A huge thanks to today's guest, Hannah Tovey, Event Director of the London Wine Fair. Make sure you visit londonwinefair.com to find out more information about attending or making an inquiry to exhibit. As a reminder, if you are an exhibitor, do visit interpretingwine.com/LWF23 to find out more detailed information about the special promotion running this year. Do be quick though, as last entries will only be accepted up until Friday, the 24th of March 2023. Best of luck and see you soon.